Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What is up? Welcome to episode number 39 of the Deep Issues podcast. It's day 5617 in the search for Tim Chevelday. I'm your host, Josh Houselander. With me, as always, co-host and producer extraordinaire, Mr. Adam Hernandez. How's it going, Adam?
It's going pretty good. How about you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm really looking forward to this topic, man. This is one I wanted to do for a long time. We kind of, Deep Issues has been a little, it seems to me anyway, like it's been a little heavy with like, either like hardcore science stuff or mostly political type things, political type things, conspiracies. This is none of those. This is a philosophical issue from start to finish, and it is Cogito, Ergo Sum, or translated to English, rough translation to English, I think, therefore I am. This podcast will mostly center on not just that idea, but also on René Descartes, the originator of that saying. Not the first guy to ever think anything like that or to tackle the subject, but definitely the originator of that, and basically the father of modern philosophy. Did you ever hear the one about the horse that walked into the bar?
And they asked why the long face.
Oh, no, that would be good, though. No, a horse walks into the bar. The bartender says, "Can I get you a drink?" He says, "I think not." And then he disappears. Now, for those of you who, have a rough idea of Cogito Ergo Sum, then this joke makes sense to you. It would make more sense to others if we told it at the end of the podcast, but that would be putting Descartes before the horse.
You suck.
I wish I could take credit for that joke. I don't even remember where I heard it. Probably in a philosophy class somewhere. But anyway, Cogito Ergo Sum means I think, therefore I am. And like we said, it was penned by a guy named René Descartes. And he wrote many books, but in his Meditation on the First Philosophy 1, 2, and 3 is where this is largely discussed. We'll talk about some of the other books he wrote, too. Actually, no, let's do that right now. Let's rattle them off. Aside from that, he wrote The Word, Compendum Musicae, Laham, Discourse on the Method, Geometry, kind of a plain name for a book, Principles of Philosophy, Passions of the Soul, and there might be some more, but I think that's all I got written down right now. He wrote all those between 1618 and 1649. So
I love all of his.
Century.
I love all of his, not too elaborate, but not long form titles, but pretty descriptive titles. And then
Yeah.
geometry.
Yeah, geometry. I wonder what that one's about. I've never read that one, but I have a feeling I know what it's about.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I have a good idea on what that one is all about. Must have been tight deadline with the publisher or something. All right, we need a title. Can't think of it. It's called Geometry. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, or he gave him some like ridiculous long title talking about it, and they were just like, "What? Hey,
we're just gonna call it Geometry.
Just go with geometry,
yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, fuck off."
Come on, Renee, get with the program. But he was, again, a 17th century philosopher. He lived from 1596 to 1650, so died at 53 years old. Like a lot of these guys, that imagine if modern medicine was around and we could have had 20 more years or 25 more years worth of thought from a guy like René Descartes, what he could have come up with.
Mm-hmm.
I often think that with these guys that die. I guess 53 to die in 1650 wasn't unheard of.
53 is, that's actually probably pretty old.
It's
in the 1600s.
Yeah, it's definitely above the average age, but he was a rich guy, who tend to live a little bit longer. I think a lot of times those numbers get brought down by infant mortality and the peasants and farmers, dying at age 32 that probably looked like they were 80.
Yeah, we'd probably be approaching death right now.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. Okay, so some of the stuff that's, let's throw down like a little bit of vocabulary, I guess, first before we kind of get into some of this stuff is all I can kind of think to do. But he was big, and we'll get to all these different things. You know, some of the things that he didn't necessarily invent, but that his philosophy circled around was rationalism, doubt. So much so with his doubt that you get basically a new kind of doubt called Cartesian doubt, which is also known as, it's got about 1 million names. I wrote them all. A method of doubt, Cartesian skepticism, methodic doubt, universal doubt, systematic doubt. These are all methodic skepticism. These are all basically the same thing. When you're hearing these in conversation, and people are trying to act like oh, that would be Cartesian doubt. Oh, I think that's more methodic doubt. It's there's no different definition for all those things. They're saying the exact same thing. He was also big into foundationalism, which basically is the epistemology of beliefs being justified by something basic. So what he's saying with all this, what he's most famous for, because we are going to focus most on the Cogito Ergo Sum, is or the Cogito, I guess is how I should be saying it. Not I shouldn't be saying the whole thing all the time, but just the Cogito is this basic idea that he's searching for who he is. He's searching for doubts. He's searching for anything. I guess it's worth noting before we get off the history part of the intro that he came up with this idea supposedly, as the biographies go, in 1619 on an extremely cold day. Very, very cold day. So cold that he actually got inside his wood-burning stove. He just got inside his wood-burning stove and he just sat there all day meditating and thinking. And he came up with these ideas because he's asking himself, what do we really know? What do we know about this reality? For instance, I guess a good thing, like, Adam, did you brush your teeth this morning?
I think so.
Okay. I do too. I'm pretty sure I did. I did. I know I did.
Yeah.
But do you know that you did?
Jesus, this is like... This is... I go through this every day, and it's something that people with obsessive compulsive disorder really, really go through. And that's, you sit there and you wonder that. I mean, you know that you did it. And I'm not speaking from a philosophical standpoint or anything like that, but I don't know what there is to it. But yeah, you sit there and you know that you did it, but you second guess yourself. Did I really do that? And I run into this stuff when I leave work. Did I lock the door?
Right.
I know I did.
But you just sometimes you go back and check anyway, right?
Oh, I check it like 3 or 4 times. Did I really lock the door? And yeah, it's an awful feeling.
And we'll have a series of these questions basically, but that's why I led with that one. Because you brush your teeth this morning because you brush your teeth every morning, and I know I brush my teeth this morning because I brush my teeth every morning. But you could be convinced that you didn't.
Oh, easily.
Easily. If you left the house and your wife called and said, "Geez, Adam, did you even brush your teeth before you left today?" Your toothbrush is dry. Like, I don't know why she's checking the wetness of your toothbrush, but maybe she is. You could be convinced. Also, I think about how it is in the morning, right? A lot of times you wake up and, oh God, you're groggy, you're tired, you
might be in a hurry.
Yeah, you're in a hurry. Exactly, you're in a hurry. And think about, have you ever had a dream where you woke up in your dream and then you realized that you didn't wake up? That was just waking up in your dream. So
I don't know if I've ever had that.
No, I have actually.
Have you?
Yeah, where you wake up in your dream and then realize, no, this is still the dream, and then
yeah, I don't know if I probably have, but you can forget dreams pretty easily.
So could you be certain that you didn't sleep through your alarm and dream that you got up and brushed your teeth and washed your face or whatever your morning routine is, and then left without doing that stuff? It's possible.
It's possible.
Yeah, definitely possible, and that's what doubting is. You know, we're doubting. Now, are we sitting here doing a podcast right now?
I think so.
I think so too. I'm pretty sure. You know,
Pretty sure
I'm
we
actually pretty sure. But can you be sure about that? I mean, we do know that people do hallucinate, right? And we know that hallucination is a real thing that does happen.
That'd be a hell of a hallucination.
I mean, and we know that we dream. And we also know that when you're in a dream, it is indistinguishable from reality. You know, and if you do ever, which this has happened to me before, if you do ever realize this is a dream, you usually wake up very soon after that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, almost immediately. But if this was a dream, you wouldn't know it. You know, you wouldn't know it until you woke up. So it seems like we're definitely doing a podcast right now. It seems like these microphones in front of us are working. They're functioning. They're real. You know, if I move too close, I'll bump my lip on it. You know, I mean, it definitely seems like that is there. But can we be certain that we are doing a podcast right now? I mean, I guess we can't, can we? I mean, we don't really know that.
This would be kind of a shitty dream if that's the case.
Well, but aren't dreams shitty frequently? I mean, how many times do you dream you're at work?
I mean, dreams, I think, are shitty on every basis because they're either it's either a nightmare or it's something that's really good, but then you wake up and it's over.
Right.
So I don't think dreams are really ever a good thing.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of them. I'm really not. I'm not a big fan.
I mean, I'm more content with going through, going to sleep and not remembering any of my dreams.
Yeah, yeah, so. And I'm one of those people too. I don't remember my dreams very often. You know, I know they say that everyone dreams every night, and
they say you have, you can multiple dreams a night, hundreds of dreams a night. So
I remember years ago. When I was really young, my crew foreman at the time, my job showed up. We were doing a tear off on a roof, and showed up and asked the boss. He said, "Man, I dreamt all night last night that we were doing this section." He's like, "Can I call in more hours for that?" Like, no.
When I used to work at the movie theater, and I was working like long hours, just like huge stretches, like around like the holiday season or during a busy time of the year, I would go home and dream that I was back at work, and it sucked.
Yeah, that's for sure. I still dream that I'm, in school. I've been out of high school for over 20 years, but I still dream that I'm in school and I can't remember my locker combination.
Oh God.
Just bells ringing, and you need your books, and you're just freaking out.
You know what's weird is I have this dream about school as well, that I'm back in school, but there's this one class that I always skip and I always fall behind in, and I might go to it like one time, like after several weeks, and I'm just, like I said, I'm just so behind in what I'm doing with it. And I know that there's probably some underlying meaning to that. What that is, who knows?
And can you be certain that you're not still in high school doing that, and that this isn't the dream?
No, I don't know if you can ever. I don't know if you can be certain of that.
Well, and that's, in some of this...
I mean, because then you start asking, what is your own consciousness?
Right.
I mean, what is real? What is the correct consciousness that you are experiencing? Is it this, or is it in your dream?
Right.
So.
And, and this is something that people have grappled with basically since, the beginning of time, since the beginning of people being intellectually capable at all.
Yeah.
And some people grasp, some people deal with it more than others. So there's a lot of people that think stuff like this is kind of dumb and just like, who cares, whatever. I don't think about that stuff. I just don't think about it. I'm not that guy at all. I recall as a little kid sitting in my room and asking my mom stuff like, why are we here? Are we real? And I know my mom thought I was a weirdo, but that was the kind of stuff that would like
probably getting your psych appointment all
nowadays
scheduled.
They probably would be. It was it was the 80s back then. It was just like, here, let's watch He-Man.
Yeah,
but
now they'll pump you full of drugs. And,
but this was something that I used to ask people all the time, like, why do you think we're real? Do you think we're really here? I mean, what is this? And I remember sitting thinking, like looking like am I like, do other people have these thoughts? What is, am I actually a person? That's so weird, And I feel like, I don't think about it the exact same way I did as a kid, but as a kid I just thought like to me it was unbelievable that we're really here, that I'm this person. So, you can take it a step further, is 2 + 2 4?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. That one seems pretty rock solid, right?
Well, math is obviously a much more definitive, subject matter.
Sure.
I mean,
sure.
There is a right and there is a wrong when it comes to mathematics.
Yeah. I mean, and that's definitely what, we've told ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
That these are things we know for sure. But Descartes still doesn't even stop there. He says, do you really know that 2 + 2 is 4? Well, yeah, I mean, you do. You have you have 2 books, and you get 2 more books, and now you have 4 books.
I see 2 books sitting on the table there, and I see 2 pens. If I add them together, how many objects are there? It's 4. So.
Right. If that is that we can be certain that those objects really exist. But he takes it a step further. He still doesn't even stop there with 2 + 2 is 4. He says he's very certain of that, but he also knows that we have senses and that those senses deceive us. I mean, we all know that, right? You think you smell chicken, and there's no chicken around. Your nose it's wrong sometimes. You think you hear something, and there was nothing. Your ears they're wrong quite a bit.
Can this relate to simulation theory?
Absolutely.
I was going to say because the smelling chicken but no chicken being around. I mean, that could, a person who believes in simulation theory can be like, well, that's a glitch in the Matrix.
This can absolutely tie into simulation theory, to bring in a vat, to the idea of a matrix, among many other things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. And that wasn't something, simulation theory wasn't a thing Descartes said, but it definitely can tie into that in a lot of ways. And that, that goes back to, Plato and his allegory of the cave.
Mm-hmm.
These basic ideas.
Your philosophy book here, I was going to say that's one of my favorite paintings.
Ah, really?
Yeah, School of Athens.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Yes, this is a cool book, Philosophy 100 Essential Thinkers by Philip Stokes. I use this book as reference a lot. I've had it for years, and it is a great book because it's like 3-4 pages on every philosopher. It tells you the basics. If you want to know a lot about a philosopher, you're going to have to dig much deeper than what this book has to offer. But it's a great stepping off point for.
You can also go to Wikipedia.
Absolutely, Wikipedia works too. Wikipedia definitely works as well. What I like to do with research on that kind of stuff is to go to Wikipedia and then scroll to the bottom of it.
And then get the sources.
Yeah, and get the sources that they used.
Yeah.
Because Wikipedia can be pretty cool. It really can be very cool.
I wish Wikipedia was around more when we were...
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that'd be awesome.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, school would be so much easier.
Kids don't know how lucky they have it today.
No, they really don't. They really don't. We thought we had it made because we had Cliff Notes.
Yeah, Cliff Notes.
You still had to read something.
Yeah, Cliff Notes aren't shit now.
So in Descartes' journey for finding, what can we be certain of? What is it that we can be certain of? Because he takes it real far here with, his 2 plus 2 is 4. We know that we can be deceived by our senses. If you look at the example he uses is if you look at a stick, if I put this pen, which we can see is very much straight, if you put this in water and looked at it, it would look bent. You put a stick or a pen or something straight, put that in water, and it appears to be bent. You ever stand outside on your front lawn one day with a little kid and ask the little kid, what's bigger, the sun or our house?
They're going to say our house.
They're going to say the house, right? But we know the sun's bigger, right? But our eyes don't tell us that. Our eyes tell us that the house is much bigger than the sun. Far bigger than the sun. So your eyes can deceive you. It's kind of like what Ben Kenobi tells Luke. Your eyes can deceive you. Don't trust them.
Mm-hmm.
This is, and this is a cardinal idea with this. So he goes real far here. And he writes on about this extensively. He says, perhaps 2 plus 2 isn't 4, but we have been
conditioned.
We not even conditioned. We have been tricked. We have been deceived. And he says, he goes off on a limb here and says, what if there is an evil demon who is, and this isn't about like him turning to a religious thing, because he was actually called a heretic a lot by some of his things, because he, one of the things he criticized was he couldn't stand modern day philosophy, his modern day,
Well, back in the 1600s, a lot of people were, considered heretics based on
right.
outside thinking that.
But he thought that the philosophy that was going on then in the 1600s, he thought it was really dumb, because no one was really asking anything. A lot of it was just kind of like appeals to God. And he wasn't an anti-God, but not a pro-God guy either. He discusses this at length. But that could be a whole nother show. So he's really annoyed with philosophy of the 1600s because it's all basically just like, what's the meaning of life? And what, it's very dry.
It's not very deep.
No, and it's, that in essence, what he thought was they were asking these questions that were so deep that you couldn't really even extrapolate anything from it, because who cares? It's so deep that you're never going to get an answer to that. So instead, he tried to break down very small things, and he did that with doubt. So he said that maybe there's an evil demon out there that is making it seem like 2 plus 2 is 4. He's, tricking you, and maybe 2 plus 2 is 5. Can we really, truly be certain that 2 plus 2 is 4? Can we rule out the idea that something is being tricked? Because he would look at science of the day and say, look how many things we thought were certain that aren't. And there was things that they were thinking were certain then that we know now in 2020 that just isn't true. Isn't the case. Even things later that Albert Einstein did that were revolutionary. There's a handful of things that Einstein did that we say, oh, we actually know that isn't true now. So, can we know that 2 plus 2 is 4? Not really. There is still some doubt. There could be some room for doubt. But what isn't there room for doubt in? We know, we think that we are a mind and a body together. Most people think that. That it's a dualist idea, is how they call it in philosophy, that you are mind and you are a body. But can you be certain that you are a body? This is where it ties into the Matrix, or Brain in the Vat. In the late 70s and early 80s, philosophers of that time got into the idea of the brain in the vat, where if you were in, they, were like purposely kind of calling it dumb stuff. If you were in a Braino machine, wearing a Braino helmet, and there was some scientist, they kind of said like, evil scientist, evil genius. Not too different from the evil demon idea that Descartes is throwing out 300 years earlier. They're saying, if they were putting signals into your brain, electric shocks into your brain, making you think that you were sitting in a leather chair in front of a microphone with earphones on, doing a podcast, you couldn't possibly differentiate between the two. You couldn't possibly know whether you really were there or whether that was being pumped into your brain, because that's how we receive information. That's how we are receptors. So can we really even know that we are a physical thing, or that we aren't a cog in a simulation, that we are not even corporeal at all, or that we are not even, really here, that we're digitized. We're on somebody else's computer screen, and they've given the illusion that we are here. Do Mario and Luigi think that those, that the mushroom really makes them big, or that they can break those blocks? Well, they would think that, right? I mean, because they jump and punch the blocks and it breaks. That's their goal.
Now look at Mario 2.
Yeah,
the entire thing was a dream.
Exactly. Exactly. A dream within a dream, a simulation within a simulation, if you will. So he says we can't really know that we're in an actual body. Can't know that. What can we know, though? Okay, well, here's where we can finally get to something we know. We know that we're thinking about this. And we know that we're doubting certain things. So why do we know we're here? Because I think, therefore I am. If nothing else, you cannot deny that we are having thoughts, that we are a thinking person. You can't even say, I can't even say I know for sure that Adam exists, because Adam thinks, therefore he is. No, I can't know that. You might not be here. You can say the same about me. All I know is that I'm a thinking being, so I must exist. Am I being tricked to believe that Adam's here talking with me? Maybe. I don't know. I can't rule that out. All I know is that I'm having these thoughts. I am definitely having these thoughts. What he said, I wrote this down because it gets kind of long, but when we're thinking, one of the things we can do when we're thinking is we can doubt. So we can know that doubt exists, because we cannot doubt that we doubt when we doubt. Right? I mean, you can't deny that you're doubting the idea of doubt because you have doubt. You know this. So his long kind of quote, I wrote this down. This is a direct quote from Meditation 2. He says, I am, I exist. That is certain. But for how long? Well, for as long as I am thinking. I am then, in a strict sense, only a thing that thinks. That is, I am a mind, or intelligence, or intellect, or reason. But for all that I am, which is real, which truly exists. But what kind of thing? As I have just said, a thinking thing. So basically all we know is that we are a thinking thing. We don't really know for sure that we're human. What if you're a robot and you have been made to, you're so certain that, if humans became extinct 1,000 years ago, but beforehand they used their last bit of technology to make robots just like them that thought that they were truly human, and in essence, or in a way, to make it so humanity could exist, or at least that thought, and we really are those robots left over from what were actual humans. Well, I guess that's a possibility. It's a really weird theory, but it's a possibility. But even so, we're still here. We're thinking. We don't know where here is, necessarily, but we are thinking. So we know that we exist. We are thinking things. He also ties into, and this could be an idea that gets, that maybe he curtailed this thought because he didn't want to get criticized. He was being criticized by the government and by some Protestant groups that were following him around. And I don't know if this was just his own paranoia, but he spent most of his life in the like Dutch provinces. He was French, of course, but he spent most of his life in the Dutch provinces traveling around because supposedly like government was like following him and stuff and like spying on him.
Yeah.
So he kept moving around. There seems to be, I mean, when you look at the historical side of it, there seems to be some truth to that. I don't know how paranoid he just was, though, maybe, about some of these things following him around. Oh, I should bring this up. I was going to maybe do this if Ed was here tonight, but didn't. There's a lot of philosophy teachers will lay this out. I'm not good with math. Math isn't my thing. But a lot of philosophy teachers will bring out a big math problem, big equation, and they will show you, you know, they'll break it down and they'll do all the math tricks and they'll show you that, you know, okay, 2 plus 2 is 4, and they start doing all the different tricks because one side of the equal sign and the other side of the equal sign, you just do the same thing. And then what they do is somewhere in the proof, they hide a 0, and most people will then forget. There's other tricks you could do. Most people forget that you can't times it by 0, and they'll, you know, just keep it going. And then by the end, they'll show you, you know, because then they break it down. They'll show you, like, okay, through this math proof, I just proved that 2 plus 2 is 5. And people will be like, they're freaked out. They're like, wait, no, that can't be, you know. I'll say, no, you know, I broke it down, 2 plus 2 is 5. And then the philosophy teacher, or mathematician, or both, will go back and show you where they tricked you. They will show you. They'll say, well, we forgot that up here, we ignored the 0 and we kind of plussed it instead of timesed it, and technically that's a math rule that we broke, and I tricked you. And just say, but if I tricked you, and I'm just a person, I mean, I'm just a person, maybe not even any smarter than the people in this room. If I tricked you, is it so insane to believe that a greater power could be tricking you all the time with your 2 plus 2 is 4? You know, an evil demon, or a master of the simulation, or a controller of the matrix, or the guy outside the brain vat. Yeah, so these are the ideas that you kind of, you know, branch off with in philosophy. A lot of times with the evil demon, he used to also use in slightly different things, he used to talk about a deceiving God. He later would say that, no, well, you know, in some other philosophical works, he'd said that, no, I guess to have a belief in God, you have to kind of believe in a God that is good. But what if there's a deceiving God? And he kind of differentiates philosophically between the potential deceiving God or an evil demon, and that got him in some trouble with some people at the time. And he never did say that it was totally the same thing, but for the most part, most philosophers will tell you that, epistemologically speaking, the evil demon and the deceiving God are for the most part, the same thing. Mm-hmm. They are basically the same idea. Okay. So where he differs from other philosophers is when he's using his methodic skepticism or his Cartesian doubt. That goes head to head, or kind of butts heads with the typical version of philosophical skepticism. And basically, philosophical skepticism, unlike Cartesian doubt, basically just says that for the most part we know a bunch of stuff, and we're going to build off of that. We're going to build off of the stuff we already know. And that's what philosophers of the day were doing. Basically, they had Aristotle, and they had... What was the other guy they used to quote a lot towards him? Oh, Saint Augustine was a big one as well. Brilliant guys, obviously. Saint Augustine and Aristotle are both extremely, brilliant philosophers. But they had their stuff at this point. Descartes never really says that their stuff is wrong. He's just saying that was a long time ago, and all we're doing is just using what they said as fact instead of trying to come up with our own philosophy. Because we're just teaching their old stuff, and it was hundreds of years ago. Are we ever going to try to come up with more philosophy with new stuff? So instead, he throws out the philosophical skepticism and brings in his universal skepticism, or his Cartesian doubt. And what Descartes used to say, what his method was he said, if you have a crate of apples, got a bunch of you got a crate of apples, bunch of them in there. Okay. You're kind of looking at them, you want an apple, and you grab one, looks okay, you see one that's rotten, so you throw that one out right away. That one's rotten, you can tell right off the bat. But, you grab one, okay, looks okay, all right, that's a good apple, you say. He said, no, that's not the way Descartes looked at the world, or looked at that thing. He said, you gotta always dump out the entire crate of apples and inspect every single apple. Because, if you want to find what an apple, which apple you actually want to eat, or which apple you want to look after. This then basically goes into his idea of, there's very few things that we actually know. He later would say that, that aside from where is it? All right, I lost you. I had this down here. Okay. The only thing that he knew, or that he thought he knew, was that he exists, and he is a thinking thing. And he acknowledged that we can believe, as we stated, I can't tell if Adam's real. I can't be certain of that. That we can at least believe that other corporeal things do exist. They do exist. But we have to acknowledge that they will deceive us. Because it is our own senses that we are using to make that, to acknowledge that. So we have to say that, okay, let's go with the idea, I guess, that corporeal things do exist. But, we still can't really trust it, because those things can deceive us. Because even our senses deceive us, so what can't? In the same token, he also did acknowledge the thing with the dreams. We were talking about the dreams before. He did acknowledge that you can differentiate between dream and reality, but only after the fact. You can never be certain that what you're doing right this moment isn't a dream. You can never rule that out. That at that moment it's a dream. But you can look back later and say, that time I, was, fighting Loki on the wing of a plane. That was definitely a dream. That one was a dream. And that, that time that, my wife gave birth to our daughter or son, that was real because there's a whole bunch of evidence that that person exists later. That child exists, later as they're growing up. But even that's just kind of like a base acknowledgement that he does. I think he kind of made those statements unwillingly almost. Maybe not unwillingly, but just when put on the spot. When people have questioned this later, because I guess you ask, can you, I think, therefore I am. Can you think and not exist? Or can you exist and not think? Well, can you exist and not think? We can't know that. Again, we can think that, do books exist? Well, we think so, but unless the book can really tell us, you know, or, you know, unless, you know, the hat can really tell us that it exists, you know, does it exist? And even then, can we really trust it? You know, I don't see any hats writing philosophy books. So can we really be certain they exist? Now, on the other token, some people try to, you know, get a little catch-22 for Descartes here. I don't know how great this example is, but it's an example that gets often used. It's usually used around the idea of a fictional character. I'm a big Star Wars fan. We already mentioned, you know, Ben Kenobi here earlier. We know that Yoda thinks a lot of stuff, right?
Yep.
You know, and we know that we know what Yoda thinks, right? If we've seen the movies, if we've watched a lot of Star Wars, we know that Yoda thinks, you know, you shouldn't try, you should do or do not. You know, he thinks that, you know, that the light side is stronger than the dark side, and that, you know, Luke should go face Darth Vader. We know things that Yoda thinks. But we also know that Yoda is not real. So, can he think but not be real? Yeah, the big, you know, that's again trying to catch Descartes, you know, off guard here, you know, after he's long dead. But we can say, like, no, Yoda doesn't think. Yoda doesn't think, he's not real. Whoever wrote the script had those thoughts. George Lucas had those thoughts. Frank Oz had those thoughts as he was doing the Yoda voice. No, so no. Does Yoda think? No, he doesn't actually think. He's not real. He doesn't exist. Another thing Descartes is famous for that ties into this, because I think a lot of people, especially people going to a modern day university in 2020, they very much think of philosophy and science as two very different subjects. You know, philosophy, science, math, English, you know, that they're very different subjects. But it was only about 100 years ago or so that philosophy even that it even started to become separated from the hard sciences. So a lot of times these guys who are philosophers, they're scientists, they're mathematicians, they're inventors in a lot of ways. And Descartes also is famous for basically inventing the law of refraction in optics. What we know. We also know that he wasn't actually the first person to do this, as evidenced in the old Kevin Costner Robin Hood movie. We know that a lot of Muslim scientists had been working on this long before, but it wasn't in the Western world. Well, and Descartes is doing this in the 1600s, and basically comes up with the idea that when you can't, his delving into the law of refraction and optics is what makes him believe that you can't really trust your senses. You can't really trust the things around you, because we don't always think about it this way. When I first heard this, I was kind of like, oh, I guess it is. That's not really how I thought about it. But, you know, if you have a telescope, you know, you're talking very basic things here, you know, not Hubble telescope here. But if you have a telescope and you turn it around, what do you have? Well, now you have a microscope. And the idea that this simple little thing could be turned around and can totally skew how you see something can be proof that what do we really know? What do our own basic eyes do to the objects we see before they're even registered in our brain? And as we know, when the famous thing they always say is when you look up at a star at night, you're not really seeing what that star looked like. What the star looks like now, I should say. Because it took so long for that light to get here to our eyes that's really what that star looked like a couple hundred years ago or something, right? Or more. That star might not even be there. That star might be burnt out by now. Or it might look extremely different, brighter or less bright than it does now. When you take that even farther, like Adam, you're right now looking at a computer screen, but you're not seeing what the computer screen actually looks like. You're seeing what it looked like a couple seconds ago, or a couple or a couple milliseconds ago, or however it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's not what it looks like anymore. That's what it looked like when your eyes first saw it, and then they sent that image to your brain. So it's these ideas that, bring this to the forefront with Descartes, Let me see if there's anything else before we kind of move on. Yeah, I mean, we mentioned how, he was, at this point, guys like Aristotle, mostly Aristotle, other philosophers, of course, but there's almost, Descartes felt, and others felt at this time, that there was almost like they decided, oh, Aristotle is such a good philosopher that we can kind of just be done with philosophy now. We don't really need to study philosophy. We just need to, we definitely don't need to be working on a new epistemology of philosophy. We can just study basically the history of philosophy. Just look back at what all these great philosophers did. But he said no to that. And this is why basically he is considered the father of modern philosophy. And he basically gave philosophy a reboot. And this idea of, I think, therefore I am, is, it's probably the most famous saying in philosophy. Just as famous as things Plato and Aristotle said. So, I don't know. What are you thinking, Adam? You like these, ideas? I mean, do you believe in the method of doubt? The idea that we are thinking things?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, that's a, humans are very, very deep thinkers. Which makes you wonder what were his thoughts on other creatures, whether it be like an animal,
Mm-hmm.
like a dog or a cat or a horse or whatever.
I think that he would, one of the things he talked about a lot were passions, and about how, any person can become a master of their own passions. Passions aren't necessarily good or necessarily bad. So he would say that, if, just like you can't know if the person sitting next to you is real, you can't know if the dog is real either.
Mm-hmm.
But that a person, no matter how unintelligent they are, if they have those thoughts, then they do exist. So that dog, even if the thought is just so hungry, or but they're thinking, they're a thinking thing, and they do exist. Then, he used to say that somebody, no matter how obsessed with their passions, that any person can be taught to move past it,
mm-hmm.
no matter how compulsive they are. A lot of what he taught, and he would have actually, if he was born nowadays, he would maybe be considered more of a a therapist or a psychotherapist than a philosopher.
Yeah.
Based on some of the ideas he said. He really emphasized the idea of thinking and how important thinking was. And one of the stories that always gets told, or pretty much always gets told in any kind of biography, anything biographical of Descartes, is There's a story where some friends of his came to pay him a visit one day at his home. No cell phones back then. No regular phones, nothing. People just stopped by, your house back then when they needed to see you. That's how the world worked. Showed up at his house at 11 in the morning. And, that Descartes' a hard worker, and he's this brilliant guy, and he's doing all this. They show up at 11 in the morning, and they're shocked to see that he's still in bed. Keep in mind, too, 11 in the morning, that's like, 11, to be in bed now at 11 in the morning is kind of like, geez, really? But then, you had to do your stuff during the day. You had to be up at sunrise because you couldn't get anything done once it got dark at night, except for maybe, sitting by candlelight or something. So they show up at his house at 11 a.m., and they're shocked to find, the famous Rene Descartes still in bed, in his pajamas. And, they're friendly, but they're teasing him. They're making fun of him. Oh, gee, really? Dude, you're still in bed. It's 11 in the morning. Come on, man, get up. And he then turns it around to say that he finds it so strange, because they said, I'm sorry, I left out a very important part of the story. They come in and say, what are you doing in bed? And he says, I'm thinking. And they start to criticize him, make fun of him a little bit. And he then turns it around and criticizes them and says, the idea that human beings think of sitting somewhere and meditating and thinking as a waste of time, yet they put so much emphasis on the menial things that one does every day is strange, and he would say that is wrong. The idea that you put so much weight on the idea that you have to get up every morning and brush your teeth and put your clothes on and move on and go do something productive, go cut the lawn or go something like this. Why is that considered so important? Yet the idea that someone is sitting somewhere thinking deeply is looked down upon. That's viewed as you're wasting time. You could be doing something productive. He would say, what's more productive than sitting and thinking? He actually, at one point, in his studies, this was before he left France, he decided that he didn't want to, his form of philosophy was not about reading anymore. He didn't want to read, and he didn't want to write letters to people anymore. That's why he kept traveling around the world, basically around Europe, was he was searching out actual tasks, actual things. So basically he would say that, no, there isn't anything in philosophy that's any philosophical idea, any bit of epistemology that can't be reached by sitting and thinking. It can all be derived from your own brain. You can do it. That he would say that's the only way to do it properly, is to not taint yourself with other people's ideas. Like the idea of him, going through the whole thing of apples. If you're so consumed with the idea that you think you found the good apple, but really that might not even be one of the better apples in the barrel, then you're not going to look. You're not going to continue your search for the apple that's actually good. Oh, I don't know, and again, this, he was just kind of getting to the cusp of all this stuff when he moved into a, little area off one of the Dutch provinces, and, got a cold, and it turned into pneumonia, and he died at, age 53. That's what happened to you. Stuff like that happened back then, I mean, I had pneumonia about a month ago or so. Didn't die, but never once did it occur to me that this was life-threatening.
The pneumonia was life-threatening?
Yeah, it sucked. I didn't feel well, but it never once occurred to me that,
You could die from pneumonia.
Yeah, that I think I'm going to die. And I know that people do still die from pneumonia, but typically a 53-year-old man, which isn't like young, but typically now a 53-year-old man in decent health gets pneumonia. It never occurs to you that, oh, dude might die. That's not a thought we have, that like, oh man, I hope he gets through this. He's going to die, But then he did, unfortunately. And he was a man of means back then, too. He was...
Of memes?
Of memes.
Oh.
No, they didn't have memes back then. No, I mean, he was, he wasn't some pauper, I actually I was kind of curious when I was looking into the history of him about where he got his money. Because he seems like he was mostly just a kind of thinker, writer, philosopher his whole life. So I always kind of wonder, I don't know if his parents were rich or what, left him some money.
Oh, do you think things were valued, that type of thing was valued more back then?
Perhaps, but I feel like you're still, you got to be somebody to have them listening to you.
Because if you're a writer and a thinker, then that means you can read.
Yeah.
And not everybody could read back then.
Very true. Very true. And he, wrote in both in French and in Latin.
Yeah.
Hence, Cogito, Ergo sum.
Yeah.
Latin wasn't his native tongue, and French was. And the reason they use that still so much to this day is because a lot of people don't really like that translation, the I think, therefore I am. Mm-hmm. It's for the most part used, but they say that when you look at how he said it in Latin and how he said it in French, it should be maybe said, how do they normally say it? I'm trying to think here. I am thinking, so I exist. Is maybe, I'm thinking, so I am here. I'm thinking, so I am. But in English and in most languages, it seems better to say, I think, therefore I am. I don't know. I don't have a ton more. I mean, I'd like to, if you have anything else you want to, any tangents, but one thing I will say is that I do find it kind of weird that these guys like Descartes, or to go even further back to Aristotle, St. Augustine to Plato, you do see a lot, even Pythagoras, you do see a lot of these basic ideas that they kind of are throwing out there as kind of strange. You see these same ideas popping up in brand new science and philosophy with ideas like multiverse and simulation theory especially, and the brain in the vat, and the idea of, just the Matrix, the movies, the Matrix, this is, do we know that what we are seeing is real, or, I guess, Descartes in some ways was the first guy trying to hand out red pills, he really was just trying to, say, you don't know what's happening, and in that long quote I read from his part 2 of his book, basically is saying that, I guess I kind of lost my train of thought there. He's saying that you definitely cannot know if you are actually there. You can't really trust it. And if something was making you think that you were here, how would you know? And now, then I think it was crazier to hear that, because you're saying, well, who's controlling you? And that's why he comes up with the idea of the evil demon. But, later in the 1970s, you hear people saying, well, maybe it's a mad scientist, right? Because now we have science. We actually know that, wow, what he was saying back then was true. Now that we've dissected brains and ran them through, we know that, yeah, that's true. If they put the right bit of electricity into a part of your brain, they can make you think something like that. And then now with the advent of computers and computers being so huge and so powerful and ever more powerful every single day, we think further. Like, wow, if we were just in a computer simulation, we wouldn't know that. I mean, we have computer simulations now. Not quite there yet. Not quite strong enough to make a full ancestor simulation, but it's getting there, you know? It's definitely getting there. It's in the foreseeable future. So, I don't know, you know? Maybe some of Descartes' things, even though they were a lot of times they were only created just to show doubt. Just to show doubt. But now maybe it's a little bit more than doubt. Now you have people like Elon Musk saying that, no, not only do I think that simulation theory is possible, I think it's, you know, it's almost impossible that it's not. You know, that we are most certainly living in a simulation, you know. Elon Musk and Nick Bostrom and guys like this are very certain that, you know, that we are probably living in a simulation. But despite that, so we're just, you know, somebody's computer screen. I don't know. We still exist, right? I think, therefore I am.
Yep. I think so. So, yeah.
You know? So, I don't know. You wanna see what Pumpkin's got?
Which is funny, though, because when death happens,
mm-hmm.
you are no longer thinking, supposedly.
Right. And that,
so that you no longer exist.
I'm very happy you said that, Adam, because that was what the train of thought, one of the train of thoughts that I lost a little while ago. He said that, how long do you exist? As long as you think. So that doesn't help answer the idea of an afterlife at all.
No, but I don't think it's supposed to.
Right. It actually says that, well, if there is an afterlife, then you will continue thinking and you will continue to exist. If there is not, then you will cease thinking and cease existing.
Mm-hmm.
To me, like, it is that simple. So it doesn't answer that question at all, but it says, well, what about in heaven? Are you saying you don't exist in heaven? He's saying, oh, no, if there's a heaven and you continue to think while you're there, then you most certainly still exist.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, it's not supposed to address the afterlife.
Right.
I mean, it's just, it's the here and now.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't look in your past and think that you exist in, or look into your future. Because, I mean, do we exist in the future? I mean, that's not something that's, I don't know if it's really comprehensible, but you only exist now. You don't exist in the past. You don't exist in the future. You only exist now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, you can theorize that you existed in the past, because you can say that, and that again is something that
I accomplished this, which has put me here.
Right. And that's another thing that's touched on in simulation theory as well. Yeah, I mean, we look back and, like, I'm pretty sure I existed in 2005.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I'm pretty certain of that. I remember things from then. You know, I remember turning 25. I remember, you know, being around then. You know, I remember the car I was driving, or the job I was doing, or, you know, being out of college. But do we know that isn't just an implanted memory? Do we know that wasn't just a dream sequence? Do we know that the simulation, if you will, didn't start till 2015, and that everything that happened before that is just it's just imprinted. It's just, you know, you're starting it right then. So, you know, it could have started in 2015. It could have started 5 seconds ago.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it could have absolutely just started. The idea that we're brought into place and we have these memories of what happened could have just started. All we know, like you said, exactly, Adam, like you said, all we know is that we exist right this second, because we are thinking. We are thinking. We are here. We are doubting. We are doubting our own doubt. You cannot deny doubt, because when you doubt, you are doubting. So you can't deny it. It's undeniable.
Yeah, and I like what you said too about the implanted memories. It's I mean, you can't have. I mean, it's impossible to have implanted memories of the future.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But it's not impossible to have that about the past.
Right.
I mean, it's.
And what I like about this idea.
I mean, that's all the past is memories.
What if, what if, and again, this can be a simulation theory thing. It can just be, a straight up Descartes thing. But what if the only thing on this planet is you? Everything else here is just we're all NPCs. We're all just non-player characters in your video game.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, of course, I'm gonna tell you I'm real too. But you don't know that because you're only thinking your thoughts. You're not thinking mine. And it raises other questions. Does anyone actually know you? Does it, and any person can ask that question. Does anyone actually know anybody else? Because you have these unique thoughts all day long, every day, that only you hear. Only you. So even your wife, even your parents, even your best friend, even the person you talk to the most, do they really know? There's no person in the world that you share every single thought with.
Except yourself.
Yeah, except yourself. It's the only person.
Food for thought.
Yep. I mean, and this is ties into free will as well. Do we have free will? Because some could even argue that, well, do you even know you're thinking those thoughts? Do you know you're thinking those thoughts, or is someone thinking those thoughts for you and putting them in your head? Well, Descartes would say that doesn't matter. I'm thinking the thoughts, whether they're implanted there by an evil demon or a benevolent god or...
But if that was the case, free will wouldn't exist.
Right. So maybe, can we even be certain that free will exists? No. But we can be certain that we think. Therefore we are. That is it. I mean, is it somebody implanting things in your head? Is somebody, to take the simulation further, is this like World of Warcraft? Is there like one specific person that is, controlling you in their mom's basement playing the video game? And is that why some people are successful and some people aren't? Is that why some people
are better at playing the game than others?
Right. Yeah. I mean, did the guy who is running, is the guy who's working Barack Obama's or LeBron James, is he like just way better at the game? Put more into it, Maybe buying the extra crystal packs, and is the guy that's running mine like asleep half the time or drunk or just stupid or just doing stuff for the lulz, just like, oh, let's see this, or just, like not playing for, like, is that when you're alone with your thoughts? Is that because you're not being controlled then by your evil demon, is what Descartes would say to keep it relevant with his, you're not being controlled by your demon then. You're kind of alone with those thoughts doing dumb stuff. They haven't played the game for a while, then they log back in after 5 days and they're like, oh crap, look what happened. Oh man, he hasn't gone to work in a week. Oh man, my what do you call them? Not like it's a me and like we's, but what do you call it? Your avatar? Like, oh man, yeah. my avatar, he's gonna be homeless. Shit.
Well, your avatar is your picture.
Okay, what's the thing I'm looking for? What's the word I'm looking for? Like in Sims or something.
I thought it was just your sim.
Okay, yeah, your dude, your character.
My sim character.
Yeah, you're like you log on after 5 days. You went on vacation for a week and a half. You log back on. You're like, oh shit, my dude's gonna be homeless. I didn't tell him to go to work. He's been sitting around. He's been.
He's been sitting around.
Yeah, he's been smoking dope all day for 3 straight days. It's like, oh crap, I gotta get this guy moving, gotta get this guy motivated again. But these are all questions, and with something that I'll end with this before we go to Pumpkin. Something that Descartes has been criticized for by other philosophers or other writers or biographers of his in the past is that in Descartes' mission to find truth and to establish what we truly know about ourselves and his idea of methodical doubt, he gave a ton to the world of philosophy. But if his goal was to answer these questions, he failed miserably because he just gave us way more questions. I mean, in essence, he answered one question and gave us thousands upon thousands of more questions. But maybe that's...
Maybe that's what he was going for.
Yeah, maybe that's...
Life is all about questions.
Yep, and definitely all about doubts.
Yep.
But, all right.
You want to go ahead and pick it and then hand it to me?
Since Ed's not here, I don't usually reach into pumpkin ever. But I will reach into pumpkin, hand our next topic to Adam, which will be when?
Couple weeks.
2 weeks today. It will be on...
The 11th.
The 11th, yes. February 11th, we will cover, which will be episode number 40, we will cover what, Adam?
Council on Foreign Relations.
Oh, okay. All right. So this is back to kind of some political potential conspiracy, I guess. Council on Foreign Relations. All right, cool. That should be a good show. Next week in this... Oh, yeah, looking forward to that one. That'll be a fun one. Next week in this time slot, we will be back to the Xcast, where we will be doing a full show on Democratic candidate Tulsi Gabbard.
All right.
Will be our show. And also, beforehand, right before this time slot, next week, we will have an episode of Politics of the Empire, where our topic will be privacy rights.
Sounds good.
Next week, next Tuesday, we got privacy rights and Tulsi Gabbard. Back-to-back shows.
All right.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Appreciate it.
See you later.
Keep thinking.